Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to get started now. This is Krishan Mitu from Proversity, and he's going to talk to us about why content is king. So I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. How are we all doing today? Come on, give me some energy. We've traveled from all over the world. How are we doing today? Soup to nuts. But the idea being that we will provide everything from instructional design, we will do the content development, we do the technology, and also learner engagement support. So this is called online program management, and again, it's just looking at a holistic picture, and that's really what we're here to talk about. So, like all organizations, so whether you are an established university, whether you are a government, whether you are an enterprise, ultimately you have a brand. You have an identity that is here to solve a problem. You call this a mission statement often. Now, the one question we're asking here is, well, why create a visual experience for a course? Like, why shouldn't it just be, I can take some lecture notes I threw up in the, that we've had for years and years, and why can't we just throw them online? And why is that not good enough? Well, I'm going to start with one case. You know, audiences expect good visuals. And what we mean by this is, like, everywhere you go, every experience you have, this is what you're competing with. So, you know, whether you are MIT, you're not competing with another university. Whether you're Barclays, you're not competing with another bank. You're competing with everything. You're competing with people's attention of time. There's something called the time well spent movement, which I highly recommend anyone in technology to look at, because it's about understanding, well, actually, what are we spending our times on? Is it value add? Is it really there to support us? And so really the challenge is that actually our audiences that we're trying to serve in online education, we're also competing against cinema. We're competing against social media. We're competing against, you know, a bowling alley. We're competing against, you know, quality time with families. Sorry? Sorry? Oh, of course, cat videos, the most viral phenomenon ever. And exactly, that's a fantastic point, right? So we're competing against all of these things, and the expectations are really high. I remember I used to be, when I was a lead designer at Jaguar, I walked into the organization and said, you want to attract, you know, the next generation of people, but your audio and video doesn't work. And I've got an iPhone which can outperform all your audio-visual systems on a car, and actually, wait, why do you think people are not engaging with your technology? And that was the challenge, and this has not changed. Netflix has really set a high bar, and I think actually, you know, one joke I have often with the team is actually, why can't we match Netflix? Why can't we better it? Why can't we create more immersive narratives and more beautiful content? And of course, bad visuals hinder learning. So it can be anything from, you know, and these are real examples in MOOCs. We went, you know, no expenses spared. We signed up to a couple of MOOCs and found some of the worst content you can see. And you look at this, and it's, you know, whether it is really basic or, you know, even just a sort of a bad form of communication, it can really be off-putting. You know, often, again, going back to people's expectations, I mean, you think about, you know, just the amount of the switching time. So to give you an example, the average iPhone user has, you know, over 100 apps. So when we have that, say, an edX app sat on, you know, on your desktop, you know, you're lucky, you know, like in that sort of environment, you're lucky to have that real estate, but you're competing against so much. And so it just takes one bad experience, and you'll lose it. And so actually, just a known study in retail, they often say that if you have a good experience, your customer will tell 3 other people. That is a victory. That is absolute victory. You have a bad experience, 7. They'll tell 7 other people how terrible the experience is, and that's only been exacerbated by social media. So as we say, bad visuals really do hinder learning because they stop, one thing, a connection to the content. Number 2, you know, if you have videos that are over, like, say, an hour long, you know, who's going to want to sit that in when we have such a poor attention economy? Now, actually, good visuals can really, really enhance your brand and your perspective. You know, you can really cut through, and it's a language I like to use of cutting through the message. So you can really be clear and succinct about the points that you want to make when you're articulating, when you're coming to your instruction or the content you're producing. So ultimately, while we are in the business of, you know, there's a technological aspect, but there's also the content, we need to be very cognizant of the fact that, you know, if, you know, particularly around repetition of content is really, really powerful. So we find if you can repeat the same message, almost what we call story beats, so almost like the rhythm of music. You know, I deliberately had some music playing just to kind of help you kind of enter in. So believe it or not, this actual presentation is a curated experience for you. So it's not just I'm going to throw up a presentation slide and you hopefully get an odd couple of sound bites. But that's it. It's about really just understanding that good visuals can help us connect and understand. And ultimately, visual content feeds good user experience. So this is actually a project we've delivered quite excitingly with the Duke of York's idea. So this is a project where we had will.i.am as a kind of a stakeholder, which was really interesting. So we were developing a digital badging platform, which basically lets sort of teenagers engage with educational content and basically get rewarded by small micro-credentials. Really, really exciting. But as you can see, this is an experience we helped develop where we've really stripped away, and you can see the character is very much embodied, and we've very much focused on the end customer here. And so we're just trying to bridge those together. When you have great technology, the content is almost seamless, and that's something we must strive for. Now, we're going to get a bit technical. So we've talked a little bit aspirationally about the good and the bad and the ugly, but really what we're going to go through now is a couple of really core principles I'd love for everyone to take away. Really because ultimately I think, having systematized processes and just having a bit of design theory, so you may have heard a topic that's been branded a lot about design thinking. This is one where this can definitely help. So graphic systems. We're going to talk about sort of how these relate, and we're going to use a couple of case studies just so you have something real to walk away with. So actually, we're very fortunate to be working with the government of Dubai. We're providing a series of programs with KHDA, which regulates all the private schools in Dubai, as well as all the vocational training. And what we've done with them is create a series of programs to help upskill civil servants in the government. So we developed the technology, we developed the content. It was literally full end-to-end. And what's really exciting about this was that it was also delivered not only in English, but in Arabic. We actually had to really understand the nuances culturally to be able to really be sympathetic and develop a really consistent communication. So actually, this is basically a brand system. So if you've ever seen branding guidelines, this is very, very similar. So we're looking at, ultimately all the elements that create the brand, from, whether it's the fonts, the weighting, we've got the colorways, these all matter. And again, I speak to, going back to where we started, it's about your organization, and it's about almost the values you want to communicate. So sure, you may want to be doing internal training to a specific group, as an example, but actually this is really the embodiment of who you are as an organization. So you often have brand police, but this can be important to ensure that we have a consistent message. And one of the core principles of learning is around consistency and clarity. So again, I stress this a lot. Now, also what we've done to kind of streamline the process. So when I talk about this, most organizations will turn around, this is going to cost us a lot, but not if you systematize it. So actually all the graphic assets have been systematized so that we can just reuse again. So we have not only a consistent narrative, we have consistent quality. And this again brings it all together. And so we're fortunate to be a global organization. We have offices in London, Boston, Cape Town, and now just as of yesterday, Salt Lake City. So really excited to share that with you. But because we're a global organization, we have a number of perspectives, and that's kind of helped us hone in these things. And again, once you have these systems in place, you can replicate and you can reproduce. And again, if you kind of do it from a principles approach when you're building your courses, it's very easy to actually update and maintain. And that's also one thing I just think about is, it's all well and good putting a course online, but what's going to happen afterwards? How do you, make sure that the content is consistent and coherent as you progress? Because no organization stands still. And this is actually the end product. So we took those systems and we're able to build, that is an open edX platform. And as you can see, beautifully colored, very well presented. We're actually fortunate to have one of the lead developers in the room, so feel free to I would love to give Antonio a shout out right now. He did a phenomenal job. And also, we also really pushed the boundaries of what would be possible on the mobile app. And again, it's a combination of where the content and the technology and the learning, really the learning outcomes. Our learning designers really worked hard to help us focus our message. It really sort of helped create a clean product. And really, this is what it is. We're in Dubai, in the Middle East, where again, you have quite a lot of, a lot of things happening. It's a very, Dubai as a city is incredibly busy, and just hugely, we're not only working with a fully Arab native speaker, so that would be the only language, like almost zero English. Not only that, we actually reproduced the platform so it would be full right to left in terms of user experience. And so again, just looking at this, how we can really create, almost, I'd argue that the Arabic side of the platform is actually on par, if not marginally better. And that's something we really, really worked hard to produce. And again, it comes back to design principle of really who are we serving? Who are we trying to make sure that they can walk away with some really fantastic learning outcomes? And that was the focus here. And also that, ultimately a visual identity is where we're getting to. So it's one thing to have the assets, so we have the principles of what we're building as a brand, and now we're talking about the identity. So this is the layer above. This is not just what you can see, this is what you can feel. Sorry, apologies for the drama, but it's really what you can feel, and that's really what, if you think back to all those times you walked away with a key, valuable life lesson, it was always rooted in something that emotionally connected to you. And so again, with actually when we talk about visual identities, this is really, really powerful here. And actually we're going to go into a little bit of how we've taken those static graphic assets and now moved them into video production. So this is actually a project we've done with Barclays. They're known for being, an incredible brand and a force across the world in fintech. And what's really exciting here was we were looking at, actually looking at some of the internal processes. How can we upskill, Barclays employees for the challenges of the future? We have cryptocurrency, we have a whole bunch of technologies that are coming. And so this was more of a, a sort of a program that we're launching pretty much every 2 weeks to kind of help them kind of upskill, keep up to date with latest trends, and really, really sort of keep a crest of things. Now, so actually here, we actually looked at a graphic system, which also went into the content, went into the background. So everything from the backgrounds are kind of cued in a way to keep it sort of consistent, and we had a certain rhythm to the course. We're actually just going to show you just a quick video, if we may. We're just going to let that load. Also, in the background, but again, we just want to show you kind of a little bit about how this works in practice. So, and what was great is we actually worked with the Bank of England previously and were able to reuse content there, and again, that's quite an exciting collaboration. So as we grow as an organization, we can kind of start pulling together, and we were talking with a friend of ours earlier today about, actually we've got an amazing collection of organizations, and this is not just us at Proversity, but Open edX as a whole. Been times I've tapped up whether someone at the edX team or someone else in the community about ideas and things, and if there's one thing you do walk away, just realize you're not alone. There's a lot of support out there, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Thank you so much. Now, deliver with consistency. Now, this is very, very important, because I think often this gets lost. You have one course that has gone live, and then you have another set of courses. What we found is that actually, when you have that, the truth is, let's be honest, like no user actually will just simply learn once and then, come back to the same content. People do not learn linearly because life is not linear. So they'll come at your platform from various angles. They'll come at it through various times of the day, from various parts of the world. I mean, when we had our first project, we had a couple of users in China, so we had to figure out how we get across the Great Wall of, well, digitally speaking, the Great Wall of China, through to, actually we had people that were commuting every day, and we could see this from the data, and we're like, uh-oh, we've not thought about this. So we actually had to learn from that. And so having a consistent, and when I say consistency, it's not just about consistent look and feel, but it is the experience. So particularly for those that are more the technologists in the room, it's about ensuring you have that uptime. It's about ensuring that, as you roll out updates, it's not too different. And if you do have massive changes in the platform, in 2 weeks' time, we have Hawthorne coming live, which is another exciting name release. But then actually with that comes a service of communication to the organizations we work with to make sure that we are consistent in the way we deliver. Now, this is what I'm excited about. So the title of the talk was about content is king. But really, that only works if we have a fantastic product as a whole. So really, if content is king, UX is queen. Because actually, ultimately, it's a partnership between the two. The content will sit there on the platform, but unless you can access and leave the platform and come back at various points, then actually your content is null and void. So yes, there's a lot of weight when it comes to the way that organizations work on the content side or the technological aspects. But I'll be honest, we started as a technology company. I wanted a big sort of Silicon Valley startup, I've got to confess. But then within 3 weeks, realized that that was not what we needed. And actually what we needed to improve the baseline of education online. We were so new into the field at the time, it was so much to learn. And actually then that quickly launched us into thinking about, well, actually, it's got to be more holistic. So then came in content production, and then later on we brought in instructional design, and we've kind of flipped the organization in a way to kind of lead with the instructional design. So what are the learning goals and what are the learning needs for an organization? We have Philippa here, Philippa Hardman. Feel free to look her up and contact her. She's amazing. So our Chief Learning Officer, and she'll happily give you chapter and verse on this. But again, it's this relationship. We talk about various parts of the organization. So we've ended up becoming a holistic offering because the technology was only a means, only became a means to an end. It's fantastic that we can, distribute content all over the world, but actually without making sure that we actually we can help users have an exciting and incredible experience and making sure they walk away with something tangibly, it's unfortunately a missed opportunity. So just something to hammer home there. So actually I'm going to walk you through another little bit of a case study. So this was IDEA again. The reason this was quite exciting because we actually built a completely separate experience for this. So this doesn't look like edX day-to-day, but again, the design point and who we were serving was very, very different. So again, it was just looking at, again, the content to fit the needs of the organization and really what we needed to do. And there you can see, again, it's quite characterful, it's quite playful, and again, this is speaking to the brand that we're working with. And sure, we have the Duke of York, who is, quite a lovely gentleman and has a certain, weight to which he likes and a gravitas he wants to communicate in. But we, again, also had to work with school children. So it's a question of how do we pull this all together. And so, what's really exciting is looking at the way you can create the visual balance. Now, a couple of things here just to kind of pick apart in terms of the experience. At the top, you can see that we have a navigation. So really what we're trying to do is give the user an indication of how much time they have. This is a little bit of a gamification element that we've put into the platform. But it's really to help people know, A, how far have we come and how far have we got to go. Now, I admit there's some more exciting things we can do around cadence and getting people to help with their motivation. If we see people dropping on their attention, there's a lot more we can do on this. It's something we're going to explore in the future for sure. But then there's also the way we look at the questions and the formats. There's quite formulaic ways and I'm speaking to those of you in the audience who are looking to produce lots of courses. Over time, you'll get into consistent behavior patterns, but one thing that's useful to think about is how do you break them also? Because again, if you kind of are almost, actually just a quick show of hands, just a bit of audience participation if I may. How many of you have done those when you're looking to go for an employer, they ask you for those analytical tests, something about literacy, numerical, and all these aspects. So it's where you sit and do these tests again and again and again. Anyone ever done one of those? Or even the SATs or any of these? And you can actually go through past papers to the point where you're almost verbatim. You don't even need to read the question. You kind of know what the answer is. And that's actually something that is quite dangerous in online learning, particularly when we scale. So where you can have similar patterns of content, we'll have similar patterns of behavior. We actually want to break up those as much as we can. So this is quite key in terms of why we say UX is queen, because again, the experience can not only aid the introduction of great learning, but also sustain it thereafter. And so another project we've done, actually if you just hang on a second, I'll just cue this up. So this is with Emirates Airline. So we actually did a kind of a technical demonstration, which is now being used to help train actually cabin crew in the organization. And we're just going to run you through a 360 VR experience. And this is, again, where we have that merriment between content and technology. So we have video, we have overlaid graphics, and this is all mapped in a 3D 360 sphere. So if we may, and we'll just run you through that. It may take a second to load. It's quite a big video, I admit. And actually, one of the challenges here was just thinking about, again, it was an end-to-end design process. So where are we starting with the learner? How are we helping them to get there? And all the bits in between. And so here we are in a training facility in Dubai, and they've just gone, you could literally go through the cabin and be able to select on elements, go back and explore the experience. And again, this is helping someone that is in cabin crew really understand. This is actually a test, this is an assessment. So we just did a trial and demo of this, just to use as a proof of concept. So this is some of the exciting things we can do now. We're in a very privileged position where we can almost go shadow boxing with some of our organizations and do experimental technology and try new things. But that's taken 5 years to get there. But this is the world's largest airplane carrier. So, with over 24,000 cabin crew alone. So when you're looking at upskilling and training individuals en masse, that's quite an incredible task. And also being the aviation industry, they have such a turnaround of content. How do you keep that up to date? It was an interesting question. And now what we thought was actually, well, again, breaking those patterns I spoke about just a second ago. Well, what if we could introduce some interactivity, some levity, somewhere where you can explore and pan? So this is actually also been used already as an onboarding experience to help people when they come into Emirates Airline, just to understand a little bit about their whereabouts and where they'll be. So really, really exciting to kind of pull that together. Now, this is personally, I'm going to kind of go a bit broad on this and then bring it back. So make it accessible. Now, what's really exciting about the age we're in is we're really kind of becoming cognizant of the fact that we have a lot of social exclusion. So there was a study actually a couple of years ago that we saw where actually the punchline ultimately was that online learning is ultimately serving the same very people that would have gone to Ivy League universities. So, I'm going to let that sit a minute. Okay, so we've talked about the democratization of education. We've talked about being able to, really distribute content en masse. But the truth is we've not quite nailed it. And one of the key challenges there are, it's really how we communicate. Now, really, this whole presentation is really about thinking about who your audience is, because, we have huge discrepancies or just say inequality in this world. So whether it is gender, whether it is race, whether it is socioeconomic status, whether it is people that are foreign or not. An interesting case study actually here, being in Montreal, would be actually what if we have English and we have French speakers. Now, if you have someone that's French native speaker, they have certain nuances and certain ways of talking that are very specific. And then actually when you now communicate that to a largely English-speaking audience or even a global audience, certain things will chime very easily and some things will be kind of harder for people to grasp. Actually, we had that earlier when we were setting up. A friend was helping us with the setup of this presentation and was saying, well, actually your English is a bit of a barrier. And my response was, English is my fourth language and we're working on it. But, but being English, you kind of look at these things. And also, as I say, think about, again, the audiences that you're working with, And also there's a huge, particularly in technology, a huge exclusion of people that are older. So again, we need to start considering all the possible use cases and really be inclusive when we come to designing content. And this also ultimately brings us to accessibility as a whole, which is often used as a branch term for people with disabilities. Now, I'm going to make an argument here, and I'm happy to be challenged on it all day. I think if you truly make an inclusive, accessible platform, it's a better experience and a better set of content. And we've seen that through the way we've designed things, the decisions we've made, just the extra labor of love we take to creating these beautiful pieces of content. Now, I'm going to walk you through basically 4 basic principles of accessibility. And this will just kind of is, again, something for you to take about and think about when you're producing courses and content. Feel free to snap away. Perception. So perception is very important. This also feeds into the user experience of the platform. It's like, how are people perceiving your platform? How are they going to engage it? So whether you're a corporate training platform and you're kind of looking at upskilling people that already know your organization in and out, it's again, perception key in terms of setting expectations. And then we'll move on to operations. So how you use the experience. So I'll give you a really fun example of where this can go badly wrong. So YouTube is one of our oldest partners, and I remember having coffee with them, and they'd been really excited. They'd done a global release of a new update to YouTube. And what was really, really fascinating was they turned around and said, you know what, there's one thing we don't understand. I was like, try me, what was up? And so they showed me the analytics, and what was interesting was they actually, from the day before, had an 11% drop-off. And I was like, that's interesting. And so we started talking about it. I was like, so what have you done? And they're like, we've done a reskin of the front end. I was like, so tell me about your team. Tell me what their backgrounds are. What are they like? And went through the whole dialogue. And what was really interesting was there was one interesting fact, because my last question was, how many people are right-handed? And you said they're probably all of them. I'll tell you what, the actual global statistics on left to right, left-handed people represent 11% of the population. They checked their wireframes, they checked the platform, and realized that the changes they'd made to the platform had not been tested from a usability point of view with anyone that was left-handed, so therefore completely negated a massive problem they were having, hence the drop-off. So again, it's just making sure you have robust testing cycles is really, really important, but thinking about how people operate and interact with your platforms. I mean, we showed you an example of what 360 video as an interaction, but that's only a short abstraction to full VR can look like. But again, we need to be far more understanding of what if you have someone with difficulties in rotating a shoulder, what does that do to the experience and how they may connect with it? We really need to think about these things, otherwise you'll not be able to hit the sort of outcomes you hope. Understanding, so this is really just making sure that what we are sort of perceiving from the first point and how we're operating is understandable. And sometimes when you have a lot of text on pages, this is a really clean example where there's just a lot of content, it can be confusing and often kind of really stop people from really being able to go forth and complete the programming. And ultimately robust, we must be able to ensure that the platforms are accessible from as many platforms as possible. So this means, we're working with edX to do a lot of work on this, but specifically around making sure that things are web responsive, that we are mobile first is actually a really quick win on this. And so when you are designing courses, do think about every possible platform they can be coming and interacting with your content. Because for example, if you've not tested in Internet Explorer, anyone that tries and goes through the platform, particularly 10 onwards, may have some challenges. And the same goes from mobile if that's not well thought through. And so that in a sense is just a quick whistle-stop tour. But I also want to just leave you with a little color theory. And this is, feel free to take some pictures of this. So this is just kind of highlighting that contrast is very powerful. So think about the colors in which you communicate. I mean, anyone that films with us, whenever we have a piece of content we're shooting, we set them actually a whole bunch of guidelines. And so what we've done is really thought about actually, the kind of, so everything from the clothes you're wearing to, the backgrounds is all thought through. And so really, I mean, what this is trying to illustrate is that you want to think about the colors that you're using, you're matching up. This goes not only from the platform, it goes through the content as well. You want to have a high contrast, which means that even if you're, for example, if someone is colorblind as well, then they'll still be able to interpret the information, even if you're using, and again, I'd still also check actually for colorblind as a filter. And again, it's something we're increasingly getting better at doing. So that kind of brings us to the end of the presentation. I want to thank you for being a beautiful audience. We've got a few minutes now for some questions, and I'd love to hear from you, your perspectives, thoughts, challenges, anything we can help you on. Thank you. Amazing.
Infrastructure is quite challenging, and people simply can't watch a 360-degree video because the cost for that will be about a meal or more. Have you worked with anybody in data-light environments?
Definitely. We actually have an office in Cape Town. So that was part of the intention, was that we would know that a large portion of our employees would understand this problem. We've also delivered actually a project all across Africa with a number of NGOs to help upskill a number of clinics in sort of HIV prevention for young adolescents. So this is basically teaching people how to deliver babies with mobile apps. That's my simplification of it. But it was far more nuanced and far more challenging in terms of the content we're delivering and how so. So, there's a couple of things that you can do, of course. Like one of the things we're pushing on is really sort of looking at adaptive streaming. So that's something we do. edX is also looking at that as well. So there's like a high and low mode that edX has in the video player. But also you don't need to have the richest content to communicate a point. So, admit we've used social media as part of the learning content. We use animated GIFs, again, which are quite heavy. It's just looking at different ways you can engage with the audience. So my challenge would be, particularly when you're working with when you know that your audience will have some challenges logistically, well, let's work with that. Let's use that as a point to innovate. I think, again, what's interesting is that in a sense, long form content, as in text content, has come back in a way. There's a platform called Medium, which is doing phenomenally well. And they have levels of engagement that is rivaling a lot of what we're seeing with really rich video content. So, I just would challenge that actually there's a number of ways of doing it. And the truth is, particularly when it comes to 360 video and a lot of the things, you'll hear a lot of one of our colleagues, Bob, is going to give a talk tomorrow in the lightning talk about fad versus value add. There's a lot of people getting excited about this. The reason we've invested in this is to really understand the technology so we can better prepare it for those challenges you speak of. because if we aren't cognizant of those, we'll never be able to do it. But I think there's a lot of potential looking at the technology in order of like adaptive streaming, looking at how we like set up servers across the world in terms of making sure we can have the load times lower, and there's a lot we can do in terms of the technology. We just need to be understanding that we are working with different problems and also stakeholders as well. But thank you for that. Any other questions? One more, okay. Completely. So every 2 weeks we're delivering a piece of content similar to Barclays actually for HSBC, 4 languages including Chinese. No, they're specifically designed for each direction they're going to. So depending on the cohorts of groups they're going to. Oh yes, we have that too. So we're working on campus.il, and also with KHDA we had multiple languages, English and Arabic. So you could switch between, you have the ability to switch on the platform which language, and the content changes as per. There's still things we want to improve on that, but I think again, looking at the design parameters, one of the things we started off with was looking at the assets and how we set those up. So again, there's a lot of replication. So although, ultimately the advice on doing multi-language on edX is really to do multiple courses, each on a specific language. So if it's Mandarin, for example, versus, like French, English, you'd have those as separate courses and you'd direct those individuals to them. I mean, I think we'll do a lot better than that. It's just the state we are at the minute. That's where we are. That's the reality. I mean, I want to have a world where the platform ultimately listens to your settings on your computer and adapts quickly, or does your using your location settings, should you give access to it, be able to use that as kind of optimizing the experience. And not only that, if we know that you're on mobile or you're traveling, why can't we use that to kind of reduce either the video quality? If you're streaming and you're traveling around, you're walking down the street, why can't we use that information that the platforms can give us? So I'd say in terms of guidance, use assets as much as you can, and particularly if you know that you're delivering in multiple languages, you can really be inclusive in terms of the design process to ensure that you cater for all. You will need to separate the buckets of content for sure, but in that you'll find one of the cheapest ways to do this is actually develop in your core language first. Usually most people say English, and then you can get a translation service running across all. We are experimenting with, for example, using IBM Watson and various other AI vendors to translate the content from English to Spanish to other languages. It's something we demoed at last year's conference. And with that, I think time is up. I want to thank you all. Cool. Thanks, man.
thank you. Thanks very much for the opportunity to share this exciting work with you. And let's get right to it. So first of all, this is an open edX conference, so just to make sure that we're all on the same page, what is Jupyter? Jupyter is a set of open source tools. There's a whole really collection of tools for interactive and exploratory computing. It's used very broadly in data science fields, and it consists of several key components. At the heart of the Jupyter ecosystem is the Jupyter Notebook, a document format that allows you to mix together multimedia content, text, formatted equations using LaTeX, markdown content with code that is executable via a connection from the browser to your Python engine or another language. There are other tools like Jupyter Hub to provide a cloud service with Jupyter, and also tools for education like NBGrader, which is going to feature prominently in our talk. And here is an indication of how incredibly Jupyter has been growing. This graph shows not the number of files with the .ipymb extension, but the number of actions that a user has taken with such a file. Because there's a lot of duplication on GitHub, of course, and so if you just count the number of files, it's a biased metric. But this indicates a number of monthly users that actually have touched an ipymb file compared to R and MATLAB, which are two also very widely used programming languages in education and in some engineering and so on. Now, I have been using the Jupyter and its predecessor, the IPython notebook, in my teaching practice for many years. This is a first course that I published in 2013. I had been teaching it before, but in 2013, in my circles of engineers and so on, computational scientists, it's got some traction, and people like it very much. It's a collection of 12 Jupyter notebooks that teach students how to come from having practically no programming experience to being able to solve the Navier-Stokes equations, which, if you have heard about them, it's not an easy task. Now, over the years when I've been using Jupyter notebooks, and it's been now several years, I've developed this summary idea of what it is that is so powerful about using Jupyter in teaching. And this is the idea of computable content. I say the idea of creating educational content, creating open educational resources is the term of art, OER, that are made powerfully interactive via compute engines in the learning platform. So this is the idea, the overarching idea that I have as a vision for using computing as a tool for teaching technical topics like mathematics, like physics, like engineering, like chemistry, and so on. And whoops, I have a black slide for some reason here. It's supposed to be a demo. I wonder what's happening. Let me just turn on mirroring. Maybe that'll help. Mirror displays, and let's see what that does. So this slide gives you a short link to a demo that I wanted to share for you. It's one lesson of a number of lessons that we wrote last semester for a course. It's an introductory course in engineering computing. And so if you go to go.gwu.edu, GWU is my institution, /engcomp3, it's module 3, lesson 1, you'll find a lesson, it's called Catch Things in Motion, that is attempting to explain physics problems using this idea of interactive computing in a Jupyter notebook. So the first thing that students are going to do in this particular lesson is use a video that has been published by MIT, capture a frame of that video, and then capture mouse clicks through events on Matplotlib. The plotting library of Python has the ability to capture events. And we capture mouse clicks of this strobe image of a falling ball. Then the students are able to get the coordinates, rather the coordinates on the frame, on pixels, and then they're guided through the process of turning that information into y, the y coordinate in meters, because we know the distance between those two white lines, and there's several steps of the way that leads the students to calculate the acceleration of gravity. So this is teaching a physics concepts through a process where you're using computing, you're teaching computing programming patterns at the same time as driving into a conceptual development of, in this case, motion, the essential physics problem. This is an example that I want to share with you. If you had time to pull it up, then you'll scroll down and see the full lesson. But there's a wealth of material that people have created as Jupyter notebooks that people are sharing on GitHub. And this is the gallery of interesting Jupyter notebooks is one place where you can find links to courses, lessons, and even whole textbooks that have been written with Jupyter in machine learning, statistics, biomechanics, geophysics, and all sorts of technical fields that people are teaching using computing. So it really is exploding in education, and Berkeley, UC Berkeley has made it the centerpiece of their Foundations in Data Science program. And they started this pilot in 2015 with their pilot course for about 100 students. Freshman students coming into UC Berkeley. The second run of the course, they had 400 students and so on, 700, and now I believe that they're teaching 1,200 students and aiming to teach all of their freshman class at UC Berkeley the Foundations in Data Science course with Jupyter Notebook. So I really encourage you to read that article, that press release from Berkeley that explains all of their process for this initiative that they have, all centered around using Jupyter for teaching. Now, the course that I gave you a sample lesson before. It is part of this module that we've put on Open edX. This is a self-hosted, self-produced online version of a one-third of a course. So the whole semester course is 3 modules, and 1 module is now online as an online course on Open edX. Here is the short URL to that course on our Open edX site. But the whole course was first written as Jupyter Notebooks. So the whole material was developed as Jupyter Notebooks. Jupyter Notebooks is our authoring system for writing this executable textbook, all of the materials that are being shared with the students and used in the classroom. So we wanted to develop we have this online version on Open edX, and we wanted to develop some degree of integration between the Open edX platform and the Jupyter Notebooks. So Michael here at IBL has been working, well, their whole team has been working with us. They have been our technical partners to develop 2 XBlocks. The first XBlock, Jupyter Notebook Viewer. Here's the concept. The idea is, my vision is that as an author, as an instructor, I want to write my course on Jupyter first. I want to create that on GitHub and actually collaborate with other people and have version control on my notebooks, and that is the source of everything. And then I can publish those online, and what does the XBlock do?
So what the XBlock asks you for is the URL to the notebook, right? And that's not the, with the GitHub wrapper on it, that's the raw file of the notebook. And it asks you for another URL to the images, right? To the directory where you happen to have those images. Sometimes it's in GitHub, sometimes it's not. And then it renders it dynamically into Open edX. Now, one important consideration there is that a unit in Open edX is, and this is the credit to Lorena, but a unit in Open edX is meant to be considerably shorter than a notebook, and many times. Right? So our requirement from the beginning was that we were only supposed to show a portion of that notebook, if need be. Right? If we ever want to show the full notebook, then okay, but more often than not, that notebook is going to contain several lessons, so we're going to just add 2 simple fields to the studio interface of the XBlock, and one of them is going to be your start tag, and one of them is going to be your end tag. So when we fetch the URL, right, we do some pre-processing there. We convert it to the HTML and CSS that looks good in Open edX, and we render it that way, right? And ultimately, aside from being able to edit this on GitHub, right, which has all of the implications of, like Lorena said, of version control, all the permission schemes and everything, you're also able to display code in a way that actually looks good in Open edX.
Here's a screenshot of a section of a lesson. So like Miguel said, and we've talked about this a lot, I've developed several courses now using Jupyter, and I know a lot of people that develop courses using Jupyter. People write a whole lesson in one notebook, and a whole module might be 5 notebooks, 6 notebooks, but a notebook, if you print it out or do an HB convert into PDF, it's going to be 5 pages, 6 pages. You cannot put a whole notebook as a unit. So the Open edX platform breaks up the content into sections, subsections, and units, and you need to be able to show portions of a unit, create a learning sequence from the material that comes as a notebook. So I author the material as a notebook and then create a learning sequence with portions of that notebook that I actually can also interleave with some, this screenshot doesn't show you, but I could show it, but I could interleave some multiple choice questions or a little video or something to create a learning sequence. In this case, I want you to look at this. This is being shown inside the Open edX platform, and you can see, of course, highlighted code, syntax highlighted code, and you see the output of the code, in this case some plotting, rendered without any additional effort from the point of view of the Open edX side. I'm just giving it the URL to the notebook. And the second, and this is really amazing, we're really excited about this. This is the second X block, the ability to create assignments that are auto-graded from Jupyter Notebooks. So as an instructor, I create a Jupyter Notebook that is an assignment. I use the NB Grader extension to create my assignment where the student might have to write pieces of code to answer the question. And as an instructor, I also write tests, essentially unit tests, that will be hidden when the notebook is processed by the NB Grader extension to deliver the assignment to the students. Then the student solves the assignment and uploads it back to the Open edX platform. It gets automatically auto-graded, and some technical things that I'm forgetting. A Docker container is started at the moment that the student uploads their notebook. The instructor creates a requirements.txt file to make sure that all dependencies are available, and it gets auto-graded. The student receives an instant report of their scores, and the score gets written into the Open edX gradebook. Okay, so screenshot. Did I forget anything you want to say about the technical side?
Well, I mean, Docker, the Docker component is significant because the reason it's there is that when a student submits something to be auto-graded, right, we spawn a container for that user for that moment only, right? So when you're building the course on Studio and you upload your requirements.txt file, you say, okay, well, this program is going to be utilizing, I don't know,
NumPy, or Pandas, or...
Yeah, and then the idea is that the instructor, Lorena, can specify that through the requirements.txt file. So at that moment, we build a Docker image that has that, that NB Grader with those requirements ready to go. Now, when the student submits it, then we spawn up a container, we run the grading, and then we tie the grade back into edX. But that container is isolated from the rest of the platform because we don't want to have any problems there.
And there are several ways that it's contained. One of the configurable options from the instructor's point of view on the X block is the maximum number of seconds that a cell is allowed to run. So, I can create an assignment. I know that the student is going to be running very simple code, and therefore any cell should not take more than, 5 seconds or something. And we set that limit. So, because certainly when the student uploads a notebook, that notebook could contain any code, any Python code, and we just, it throws an exception if it goes over the time. Yeah. So here's a screenshot. This would be from the point of view of the student, how they would see an assignment. This is my real course where we've actually put in the assignment yesterday with, we created an assignment using NB Grader. And this is what they would see. They would see some instructions, and they would see a link to download the notebook that is the assignment that they have to solve. They do have to use their own Jupyter installation, whether in the local machine or in a cloud service. We're not providing cloud computing that is tied to the course at this time. There are several issues with that. Cost is one, security is another. We're not providing that because this is an completely open to join and free course. But the student, we give instructions on how they can install, of course, their Jupyter locally, or whether they could use a cloud provision. And so, demo time, okay? This is the exciting part. All right, I want to show you immediately, this is my course, this is the live course. And I've got here the section that I was just showing you a screenshot of. So here is where I've added 2 assignments. The assignments that you were seeing is the first assignment. I was just showing you that. And I am going to let this show for a little bit here, because I'm actually going to copy those instructions so that I could save some time. This is how we normally author, right? Copy and paste sometimes. Copy, and I'm going to cancel here. And I'm going to go to the next unit, which is ready to go here, assignment 2, but it's got nothing in it, and it hasn't been published. You can see this has never been published. This is my live course. I'm actually playing with my live course in front of you. Okay, so we're going to go to advanced and check on graded Jupyter notebooks. That's the X block. Here's my instruction portion to edit. And so first of all, I could upload here my requirements.txt, but I'm not going to upload it because I already did it for assignment 1, and I have the same requirements here. If I were to re-upload a requirements.txt, it would regenerate the Docker image. I don't want to do that because it takes a few minutes. So just to make it faster for you, I do want to choose a instructor notebook. The instructor notebook, this is, I have it ready here on my downloads, is assignment 2. And that's the assignment going up, and it's now testing that it works. If the assignment, for example, was not well created, click on the assignment on the upload button. If the assignment had some errors and MB grader was not through an exception, then I would get here a big red notice about that. And then I'm going to edit the X block. I'm going to add here the thing that I copied before from the previous assignment. But I know that this assignment is not dealing with string manipulations. It's actually dealing with string methods. That's the second assignment, is a little bit more advanced. But everything else about the instructions are the same for the student. Download the notebook, do what you have to do. So save. Oh, I'm not going to save that yet because I want to show you the options. Here are other options. For example, I could say, 0 is the default here for the allowed submissions. That means infinite submissions. The student can resubmit their Jupyter notebook, and it gets graded again, and the score gets updated each time. Or I could set there a number of submissions, 5, 10, whatever I want to do. Then network allowed, the default is false. Maybe there's one notebook where you might want to allow network access for some specific reason, handle with care. And cell timeout, there at the moment I have 15 seconds, probably too much for this notebook anyway. Whether we allow this, where the X block is going to send back not only the score, but the graded notebook to the student is the option that I have there. The default is false. If we set that to true, the student gets the notebook with the visible tests, so they will actually get a solution. So most of the times you will say false, especially if you have infinite uploads, infinite submissions. And a maximum file size, and we just don't want a student to upload some buggy notebook with, I don't know, like a embedded huge PNG or something. Okay. So there it is. I've just created the assignment with the X block, and I'm going to click on Publish. And there it is. So now I'm going to switch from Safari to Chrome, where Miguel has his Open edX as a student, and is going to show you his experience as a student from interacting with that assignment. Hopefully he can remember some string methods. And his password.
Yeah. So even if this is just string methods, of course, being here makes it incredibly stressful. So great.
You have several minutes because I was talking fast.
Yeah, no, of course. So.
All right, so the right section where we play with data in Jupyter, where it says test yourself. Good. Assignment number 2 is now live. Of course, you can go to our course right now, and if you have Jupyter in your machine, you could enroll, go to that section, download the notebook, solve it in your Jupyter, and see if you can get a grade. Oh, no, you have to no, that's my session, so you have to change that, and you can, okay, fine, good.
Yeah,
delete mine, and yeah, good,
right.
Good. Good job.
This is not my own, thank you.
You don't need to go to terminal because I already loaded Jupyter there.
Oh, fantastic, okay.
It's working. So now you have to go to the downloads location to find it.
Oh, great. Okay, sorry. I put it here.
You put it there?
Here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, solve your homework,
All right.
student. This is the homework. This is how the student sees the homework.
So,
all right. Exercise number 1.
You know, I did this already, but still it's a little scary. So, using the index method, find the index of the first parentheses.
So the student has to, there's a workflow that you have to train your students to do. They have to remove that where it says write your solution here and actually write the solution. You have to execute the cell, ideally. All right. Next problem. Can you do a couple and then upload it?
Of course.
All right.
Yeah. Fine. All right. So
use the index method. Find the index of the second parentheses.
I already named this under the wrong variable. See.
We have to also train our students to follow instructions to the letter because we're using a testing framework underneath. So I say, idx under -2, that's the variable name they need to use because I have a test, a unit test essentially to do the auto grading. So I believe, I'm not going to give him tips.
All right. Okay, see now.
Are you happy with that?
Do you
want to do one more?
Do we want to do one more?
Yeah, one more. Do C.
C?
Using the information obtained in part. Okay, slicing.
So.
Text-paren. Good.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so. That, right? And I'm probably going to have an off by 1 error, right?
Doesn't matter because you have infinite tries. You can submit
Okay.
Execute and save. Oops, you have an error.
Wait, what do you mean?
When you set IDX1,
yep.
You're getting text 1 at that index. Who's one index?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Up above.
Wait, up above? Okay, so can you just tell me what to do, please?
He's nervous.
I did this yesterday and today, but
Get rid of the closed bracket at the end.
Close bracket at the end?
Get rid of that one.
Yeah, the square bracket.
Sure.
That and delete the first text underscore 1.
The first text underscore 1, that one?
Delete that and,
Sure.
the square bracket. There you go.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, now it's not even my grade, now it's all your collective grades, so I don't feel that dumb anymore. So
All right.
yeah. Okay, probably shouldn't have a plus sign there. Boss, do you want to come over here or? Line 14? Yes, okay, got it. Yes, yeah, learn, I mean.
All right, save it. You can just save it and upload it as you have it right there. And see what happens. Delete that if you don't.
Yeah, all right,
Just delete it.
Wow, I feel remarkably stupid right now.
Okay, good.
It
executed. Okay, save it.
Yes.
Okay, save it. You've saved it. Now you need to upload it.
Okay.
All right.
Here? Yeah, good.
There.
Sure.
Get the right one. So it's from desktop. Okay, good. Upload. All right.
Now we just launched a container. We're running my crappy code. Oh, actually, yeah, we did pretty well. Not really.
All right, so this would be the experience of the student. And since in this case they have infinite tries, they could continue working on the notebook and upload it again and see those red boxes turn into green. Maybe for an exam, you would, if you wanted to do an exam live using this method, you would only allow one submission, who knows. But those are the options. And I want to show one more thing, which is that it's all open source. So the XBlock is available to download already under a BSD3 license. The instructions for installation are there. And I also want to show you one more. So this is the grading XBlock. Then this is the Jupyter Viewer XBlock. they're all open source, and you can install them in your self-managed OpenEdX instance. Obviously, at edX.org is not going to be available because edX.org doesn't very easily like to install third-party extensions, but this is the flexibility and agility that you have if you're running your own OpenEdX instance. And I also want to show you how, so this is from my side, the OpenEdX platform, but I want to show you how the assignments look like. So as I create an assignment, this is my source assignment notebook. It looks similar to what you just saw, but in this part is where I would write the solution, okay? And then in the next cell, we have the tests, in this case, very simple tests that are simply, it's a simple assert to get the right element. It's very hard to write smart tests for simple code, but as you do more elaborate assignments, for example, you have a function, you're asking the student to write a function, then you may have a smarter test that is actually checking for something, because here the student can cite if they're smart enough to, I think ahead how the test might work to give it the right answer, I think they deserve the points anyway. So anyway, this is how it looks like. So you have begin solution, end solution. As you run MBGrader on this notebook, you're going to have to select the MBGrader extension. Gives you a little extra. This is just being visualized here on the public GitHub, right? Oh, actually, it's a private GitHub with my homeworks. If I have it running on my local Jupyter with MBGrader installed, the extension is going to give me some extra little buttons here that will allow me to indicate that this cell is going to be a graded cell, and that this cell down here is going to be a hidden tests, and then I can assign also the number of points to the graded cells, and I go doing that with all my assignment, and then save that, and that is what you upload to OpenEdX. That intermediate file where you have already indicated how many points each question is going to be worth, and already the tests have been hidden for the students. So we are open for questions. Thank you. Yes. Please. I have no clue if there's a reason for that. We always... Oh, right. So he's asking, is there a reason why these are two separate X blocks? I have no clue if there's any way to do it as one X block. We never thought about it that way. It was always imagined as an X block to view, to author context. So the first X block means I can write my content, the content that is the reading material, the textbook, content for the student to do the learning. That part is one X block, and then there's another X block for grading. We always envisioned it that way. Whether it could be combined, I have no clue, but I like it modular like this, because some people might want to just create a notebook. For example, people in adult scenarios, you might want to just provide the learning sequences, and you're not going to give them any graded examples. You have a professional scenario where you trust the learners to just be self-regulated. So yeah, it's more modular this way. Come on, we left time for questions, please. Yes.
So as a student, when I'm going there, I have to log into Jupyter. So how could we ease this? There are commercial products that actually they provide AWS-backed environments. So
that is a total different scenario, right? Yeah. So
how could we make this easier for learners so they don't have to go set up on anything on their machine? So
yes.
Right,
so he's worried about making it easier for learners to actually have a cloud-provided Jupyter Hub service, which is the server-side provision of Jupyter instead of the client-side provision where they have to download and install an account, and you have to deal with all different environments. Very important question, very important situation, but we're not solving that, right? We're not solving that. So this is an open course, and it's free for anybody to join. I'm just not giving them free compute. They have to follow the instructions and be in charge of their own machine or use their own selected cloud provision. This is a live course. I'm going to show you that. Nevertheless, the way that I provide in this course the possibility of having a computable experience is I provide, where is it? Binder buttons. So let me say here, maybe I'm going to go to the next one. I think I have a binder button in every section, but I, at the moment, cannot find it. I think in the beginning of each section I had a binder button. Or at the end, I don't remember. But maybe about the scores, overview. Certainly here in overview I have Jupyter Notebooks, binder. All right, there. So there's so Jupyter Notebooks here, there are links to each Jupyter Notebook. These links go out to MB viewers, so the student can actually read and so on. In addition, I have PDF versions because you can run MB Convert on the notebooks, and so I provide printable versions. The students like to print stuff for some reason. And here is a binder button. So for the free followers of this course, they can use binder, and they're going to have a free service, cloud service provision, okay? On campus, for my students that are on the classroom, I have a Jupyter Hub provided by my library where I have single sign-on university credentials, okay? And I create the necessary behaviors there for them to alternate between the Open edX and the Jupyter Hub. But I can't provide this for free for anybody that just joins my open course. Okay, that's the short answer.
And if I can add one thing, this is not a technical issue, right? So for example, NVIDIA's Deep Learning Institute just launched, and they actually run on Jupyter, right? The difference is that
they have money.
Yeah. So when you press launch, there is an instance that is backed by a massive GPU, and that happens all directly from the learning platform. So the only issue with that is, it's the money, right? Who's going to be paying for that? So,
and the Bitcoin miners.
That's true. That's,
if you provide, at the moment you start providing free cloud for people, you're going to get some people taking advantage, and you have to constantly monitor. You have to have a system administrator running cron jobs, detecting whether there's Bitcoin miners and shutting down those jobs. I don't want that headache. This is a self-hosted, self-produced Open edX platform that me and my student manage with the help of these guys, and that's it. So I cannot get it. That's why we're not worrying about that, because it's not something that we can provide. In different scenarios, if you're a multinational institution and you really want to promote your new programming language and create free online courses, and you want to provide cloud for everybody to use it, then you have to talk to somebody else to give you that, technology. There's several offers there.
Because we are worried about students being a little nefarious and submitting stuff like, I don't know, RMRF, and other things to the notebook, to the grader, that we don't want to run, on our own, on our own file system. So you could say, okay, well, I'm going to run it with a user that doesn't have permissions to do that. Okay, but then you have other problems, right? And some of them are, is the student going to be filling my instance with garbage content so as to make it unusable for other people? Is the student going to be able to download some binary from somewhere else, which is why we have the network allowed set to false by default. So
it's just to provide a little, fence around the student when they're not actually dealing with this interactively. They're just uploading a Jupyter Notebook, but in the Jupyter Notebook there could be any code.
And you could say, well, we're going to have a long-running instance, but the reason, if you have a long-running instance and you put every student in the same space, then one student, maybe he won't be able to bring down the entire platform, but he'll be able to ruin it for everybody else. So
we have another question over there. I'm sorry, I saw this one first. Go back to you.
Just a quick question. I mean, I would love to set this up and try it out in my institution. Has anybody successfully also set this up? Or is it the documentation on the
This is hot off the oven. Man, this is, we finished, we put this on GitHub, what, some weeks ago? Or did you try it already?
I have not played with it, but we installed it without any trouble.
Oh, wow. Our first user. Yay!
I just happened to come here.
There was a question up there, yes.
So does the checking of the Jupyter Notebook, the Docker, is that run on the same really
Version 2. At the moment, it's running on the same machine because I'm just trying to save money. Cloud, AWS is expensive. Yeah, it's running on the same machine. Ned, did you want to say something? No? Ah, good. Another question. No, they have no access.
My perspective is that it's an environment with like no dependencies. Like, is there a way for students to download that Docker image?
No. The student has only access to this button here to upload this button here to upload their notebook. That's all they can interact with, upload their notebook. The notebook gets sent by the XBlock to this Docker image, gets graded, gets sent back, and they see their score. That's it.
So the student has to have their own
Yes. They have to have Jupyter in their machine or use the Jupyter Cloud provision from another source.
And the requirements are, if the student needs some package, then the professor should be able to specify it from the requirements TXT in Studio.
No, I'll provide an assignment that has the right import commands. Yeah. Yeah.
We're at time, so let's have another round of applause for
Thank you. Thanks so much. Open source, everyone. It's free. Use it. Post issues if you have a problem. Be kind with the developers. Don't complain.
Testing.
I'm excited. Let's talk. You already saw it. I know it's gonna be so good. It has a great like color schemes, and I love the beheading.
For not using the official deck.
Oh really?
Come on.
You know the official deck. It came late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really late.
Yeah.
The one from last year was really hideous.
Oh really? Okay. Yeah. This one's fine. And they're all like you're like very teacherly like this. Yeah. Okay, cool. Hello. Hi everyone. Welcome to State of the Open edX Frontend with Ari Rizzitano.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out to my talk. My name is Ari, I work with edX. Before I get started, a little bit about myself. As I said, my name's Ari Rizzitano. I'm a software engineer at edX. I do most of my work on the front end, JavaScript, CSS, all that fun stuff. I also run the FedEx working group, which is a collection of engineers at edX that work primarily on the front end. You can find me on GitHub, email at the addresses listed here. So what are we going to talk about today? So my talk has 4 parts. First, we'll learn a little bit about what exactly the front end is, what it means for edX. We'll take a look back at some of the technological changes and advancements we've made over the past year. I'll dive into some of our architectural goals, stuff we're hoping to accomplish next. And then finally, last section, I'll talk about ways that people extend the front end of Open edX and how we're hoping to improve that. All right, so what is the front end? Show of hands, who came to this same talk last year? Okay, decent number of people. So last year I talked a lot about the existing technologies in our platform. We started out with code all related to the interface. It's rather complicated to try to sum it all up like this. We can say it's code that relates to display, code that relates to layout, interactivity, animation, form submissions. All right, that's kind of complex. Maybe we can talk about some specific technologies that we use. Right, we've got our Mako templates. We've got some legacy JavaScript ES5. We've got some jQuery. We've got Backbone, Underscore, Sass. And then more recently, we've been adding Bootstrap, Webpack, ES 2015, React, Redux. This is all very complicated. So the definition I like to use for what is the front end, it's Open edX code that runs in client browsers. That's it. It's a pretty all-encompassing definition. So in terms of files, what does this look like? So I did a quick GitHub survey of all of the front-end related files in edX repositories. We have over 9,000 JavaScript files. We've got close to 3,000 SCSS Sass files, and a decent amount of CSS, JSX, and unfortunately still a little bit of CoffeeScript, although we have removed it completely from the edX platform. So just in the edX platform, this is what our file count looks like. You can't really see the legend over on the right-hand side, but importantly, that big blue chunk, the 24%, that's all JavaScript. And then the 47%, the big orange half on the bottom, that's Python. And then we've got little bits of other stuff sprinkled throughout. That's file count. Let's take a look at lines of code. JavaScript goes way, way up when you look at this. We've got 462,000 lines of JavaScript in the edX platform. Now, admittedly, a lot of this is due to our vendor files, which we have checked in, but it's still, JavaScript outweighs Python in terms of lines of code. It's a significant chunk of the edX platform. It's not just a pretty face, it is our software, and we need to treat it as such. So, technological changes we've made over the past year. Last year I talked about how we're moving forward with ES 2015 through our use of Webpack, and we've made a great deal of progress on this front. So Webpack, in case you're not familiar with it, it's a tool for compiling and bundling front-end static assets. We mainly use it for JavaScript, although it can be used for CSS and Sass as well. So it enables us to use the latest and greatest front-end technologies. It lets us write ES 2015. ES 2015 has been out since 2015, so we should be using it by now. Fortunately, we are. So we're using it in 15 different repositories. We're using it to replace require. And we're also doing our best to get rid of update assets in the edX platform. A huge amount of work has been done on this. We're funneling all of our existing assets into Webpack. Work is underway to process XBlock assets with Webpack as well. I teased at React last year. We've been ramping up on that as well. So we're using React to build all new UI in the edX platform. So all new front-end code uses React. It's not pure React yet. React still needs to interoperate with our existing Python templates. So we have this little module, React Renderer, in the edX platform that enables our developers to embed React within Django and Mako templates. We use Redux as our data layer, and we use Jest and Enzyme for tests. We've used this in a lot of brand new greenfield repositories. It's also, as I said, embedded within the edX platform. And fortunately, React no longer uses the problematic Facebook license. They have since switched to the MIT license, so it's not a problem for us. Shouldn't be a problem for you all either. I want to dig into some of the new projects that I just mentioned that our development team has established for front-end work. So we've done a good deal of work on accessible UI components. If you were in Dennis and Tyler's workshop yesterday, you've probably heard a bit about this. We have a new library called Paragon, and this is a set of reusable, accessible React components. These are generic things, modals, drop-downs, buttons. They are themable via Bootstrap. And this is a package released on NPM. You can check it out at the address here. I'll also share the slides afterwards in Slack, so you all have access to them. We also have been doing a significant amount of work on Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a CSS framework. It's been out for several years now, and we are moving towards using it to style all of our new UIs. Bootstrap's great because it's really well maintained, it's well supported by the open source community, and it's extensible and themable. Bootstrap 4 was released not too long ago, I guess a few months back, and it has a lot of support baked in for accessibility, for theming, for responsiveness, mobile-first development. So we have this repository, edX Bootstrap, and this is stock Bootstrap, which we have flavored with some open edX customizations. And this repository contains a first pass at an initial example Bootstrap theme. So once we start using Bootstrap for more of the theme UI modification of the edX platform, this is an example of what a theme might look like. Also, this is something I'm especially excited about. There's a cookie cutter for new Django apps. We've created one for front-end applications as well. So I don't know if many of you are React developers, but React releases a tool called Create React App. And we've created our own edX-flavored version of that. So we made a front-end cookie cutter application, which is reference code for new front-end applications. And then we have a CLI tool, which was just released last week. So I'm taking a few risks by telling you guys about it, but it's great. And this is a tool that you can run from the command line. It will spit out a ready-to-go, brand-new front-end application with all of the necessary boilerplate in there. It uses all of these technologies I've just mentioned: React, Redux, Webpack, Bootstrap, Paragon. This is great because it enables us to be consistent across our front-end projects. Finally, and again, if you were in Dennis and Tyler's workshop, you will have heard about this already, but we have our very first separate front-end application. So this is Studio front-end. So Studio being the educator-facing part of the edX platform has been undergoing some major UI improvement work. And to do that, the team built out a separate React project. It's a separate repository. Its assets are built separately and released separately, and they build really fast. It's built, again, with React, with Bootstrap, and with Paragon. And then this package is installed and rendered in line within the edX platform. All right, so now I'm going to dig in a little bit to some of the weightier architectural problems we're hoping to solve over the next year, I would say. If you're at all interested in the broader architecture of the Open edX platform, I strongly recommend you check out Nimisha's talk tomorrow on future directions of Open edX architecture. That's tomorrow morning. This is primarily focused on front-end architecture. So the state of things right now, the edX platform was built initially as kind of a Django monolith. So all of our JavaScript code is built, it's deployed with Python. And that worked fine to start with, but we have, as you saw in those charts, we have so much JavaScript right now. And we're a little bit held back by the Python front-end ecosystem. JavaScript does JavaScript best. Python does Python best. They don't really work that well with each other, right? So developers kind of have to hack around the limitations of Python in order to use the front-end tooling that's the latest, greatest, well-supported, good open source community support. A good example of this is the way we handle Webpack includes with Django, with the Django Webpack loader. Also, it's costly and it's time-consuming to completely convert pages as they are. So how are we going to get around this? Well, the only thing to do is to split them apart. So what we want to do is separate our front ends from our back ends. For some of you, this is old news. Some of you have already done this, and we've taken a great deal of inspiration from projects the community has undertaken on their own, separate front ends. So what does this mean? So if we split the front end from the back end, front ends will be built, released, and deployed independently based on shared infrastructure. This means we'll have faster development cycles, faster delivery cycles. Developers won't have to wait the several seconds to minutes for the static assets in the edX platform to build. With Studio Frontend, for example, asset builds take less than a second. You can see your changes immediately. It also provides us with a nice, clean, greenfield environment to explore modern technologies. So this is what the architecture of such a system might look like. Again, if you work with a company or provider that has already done something like this, this probably looks fairly familiar to you. So our goal is to, as we split our Python backend into separate microservices, we want to split up our front ends into micro front ends as well. And the goal is to have one front end per domain. Again, check out Nimisha's talk to hear more about how we draw these lines. But the front ends will be able to independently communicate with those existing back-end microservices. We can't just do this out of the box immediately because it takes a lot of work to establish a brand new, separately deployed application. So this is the path we want to take to get there. So on the left, stage 1, you see where we have been in the past. Front end is compiled, is rendered server side by Python, and we send over a relatively static HTML page to the browser. Phase 2, that's where we're at right now. We're still rendering HTML on the server, but we're bundling small bits of React into the page as well, sending that across. And then that little bit of React knows how to make requests back over to the server. Phase 3, which is what's next for us. We want the server still sending across that static HTML page, but in this world, React owns the entire page and is responsible for all of the UI that's displayed. And then final stage, stage 4, we have a completely decoupled React application. And as you can kind of see here, we can start from phase 2 and grow to phase 4. We can take that little bit of React, eventually take over the entire page, and then eventually deploy it completely separately. And that's going to be served from a static hosting provider, something like a CDN, like AWS, and then that separately deployed front-end application will have all of the information it needs to call back into the original Python application that it was being served out of. Right, so as I said, we gathered inspiration from this from the community. And a lot of folks have done this. A lot of folks have done this to great effect, which is awesome. It's not as easy for us as the core contributors to the edX platform to pull something like this off. Why? Well, number 1, theming. Number 2, it really impacts feature velocity. We can't just rewrite everything and stop writing new features. Finally, as I said before, with theming, backwards compatibility is a major issue. So how are we going to do this if supporting legacy code, legacy extension points is holding us back from this cool new front-end architecture? What's it going to take to get us across the line? So here I'd like to dig a little bit into existing ways we have to theme the Open edX platform, to modify how it works, how it functions, and the content. Many of you being open source users of the Open edX platform are familiar with this. So theming is a means to enable Open edX users to customize the user interface of the Open edX platform. So what exactly does this mean? One means of customization is through style. This is stuff like fonts, colors, logos, branding stuff. You may want to change the colors of your platform to reflect the colors of your organization or your university. You might want to use your logo instead of the Powered by Open edX logo. And the current technology we use to accomplish this is Sass partials and Django templates. Another way we modify the Open edX UI is through changing the interface elements themselves, right? So you might want different tabs. You might want different items in your header. And ways to accomplish this currently, also Django templates and web fragments. Finally, some folks want to modify the content in the Open edX platform itself. So the scope of this in terms of theming, I'm referring to changing things like onboarding text. This isn't meant to cover stuff like X blocks, X modules, that sort of extension. This is just the Chrome of the platform itself. And again, this is modified through Django templates. Right, theming. So we have multiple different theming systems in the Open edX platform right now. We've got comp theming, which is kind of the biggest and probably most broadly used one. Stanford built a theming system. Theming works a little bit differently for microsites. And then there was the pattern library, which came out a few years back and achieved some adoption. Are there any others that I'm forgetting? No? Pretty much covers it? All right, so those are all of our theming systems. All of those are in there right now. And primarily, these systems enable theming your Open edX site via file overrides. So you can override a Django template with another Django template, with your customized version of the same Django template. You can override a SAS file with your customized version of that SAS file. And that worked great for a while, but we started feeling quite a bit of pain from it, both the community and the core contributors to the edX platform itself. And there's kind of a big elephant in the room here, right? Django templates require Django templates. If we're moving towards this new, cool, React, separate front-end ecosystem, what does that mean for theming? How are we going to handle theming in a world where Django isn't as much of a major player? Also, all these theming systems, they have very clear APIs, right? Not really, no. So lacking clear set of integration points, we run into all kinds of problems, both for core contributors as well as for users of the Open edX platform. Core contributors are constantly breaking the theming system. So in changing the content of, say, a file, we might change opening tags, trailing tags, and if someone has overridden that file, it's going to break. It's going to break in their system. Same goes for the CSS. And because there's no clear API, there's no clear contract that we have to support, we often do this and aren't fully aware of it. On the other side of things, we struggle to make major innovations to the Open edX platform. We struggle to change things, to build brand new, fresh pages, because we're worried about breaking theming. We're already breaking theming very badly, but because we're worried about breaking it more, we can't really get out of it. It's a cycle that we're trapped in. So I want to propose a new approach. So my goal is to enable style changes, interface changes, and content overrides. Still all of the things y'all are used to, but we want to do them independently, and we want to have clear, well-maintained APIs for all of these things. The first thing we want to tackle here is style theming. So as I've mentioned, we're moving towards using Bootstrap. Bootstrap is great. Bootstrap has great open source support. It has excellent documentation. It is something that we did not build ourselves. Again, style theming, as I mentioned before, covers look and feel changes. It covers branding changes, style overrides. So what we want to have to support this is an official style theming API based on this Bootstrap API, and support this in all of our applications. We're already supporting it in all of our new code, but we want to support it in legacy applications as well. We're going to eat our own dog food with this. edX has folks that make use of theming already. Our white label teams use theming. But we want everybody using it. We want to theme edX.org with this new theming system. So we will use this, and we'll keep the breaking changes to a minimum, because it's in our best interest to do that as well as yours. Modifying the interface and the content still want support for those, but we're going to declare those out of scope of the style theming system. Those are things that Bootstrap is not great at. Bootstrap doesn't let you change what tabs display on a page or the text of a button. Bootstrap is focused on style, and so we should let it do what it does best. I don't yet have a good answer for you for how we're going to do that. I welcome all of your ideas and all of your contributions, but for the first pass, we're focusing on style. Here's the bad news. Existing systems support for style theming. We want to deprecate this. We will do this very transparently. We'll do it over the course of several named releases, and we'll be very clear with the community about what exactly we're doing and when we can expect support to end. But we have 4, coming on 5 different theming systems. It's confusing for OpenEdX users and OpenEdX contributors to maintain all of these things. And quite frankly, it has been holding us back. If you have thoughts on this, as I'm sure you will, please come find us and chat about it. We're doing a birds of a feather session tomorrow morning about the front-end, back-end split. That's at 10:45. Please come find us. Come chat. Here's my call to action for all of you. The great thing about the OpenEdX platform is that it is open source. That means anyone can use it, but anyone can also make contributions to it. Let's take a look back at that file count. Look at all that JavaScript. Look at all that CSS. If there are things that you find that you don't like, submit a pull request. We're happy to look at your code. We're happy to merge it back upstream. Our FedEx team is fairly small. So if you have strong feelings about this, if you care about it, please help us make it better. Another way to get involved, we have a channel on Slack, front-end. I'm sure all of you know where to find our GitHub repositories, but just in case you don't, here it is. Please come to that Birds of a Feather session, 10:45 tomorrow. We would love to chat with you. And that's all I have. So we've got about 7 minutes for questions. Yes?
So quick question. At the very beginning, you define front end as things that go in a web browser.
Mm-hmm.
They may be very nervous. Because web apps are one thing and mobile apps are another.
Yes, that's a great point. So as you can see, I didn't really cover mobile within the scope of my talk. For my own definition, and for the definition we typically use within edX, front end means like JavaScript, CSS, but mobile is important to us as well. And the things that help are code that runs in browsers, clear APIs, well-defined stuff, also really helps our mobile applications. The more we can move to well-versioned, clear APIs, the better off both our web front ends and our mobile apps will be. Yes?
Can I request the pattern library be the first thing that goes?
Questions around pattern library being the first thing that goes. I am all in favor of that. Thank you, Julia. Other questions? Yes?
Do we have a timeline for changes, in particular for the theming changes?
The deprecation, yes. So I didn't mention this, but we do have an OEP in the works for theming. This is another reason for all of you to lurk in the front-end Slack channel. When that is ready for review, and it's very close, we'll share that in there. Essentially, the gist is we're hoping to spend some time building up scaffolding for the new theming system, announce an alpha release, and then 2 named releases out, then we'll start deprecating. But that's flexible. That's definitely up for adjustment. If you have strong feelings about it, comment on the OUP. Yes?
It sounds slightly better when you mentioned how does it work for Xbox in front-end part? What would change?
That's an excellent question. So as we start moving towards the new style theming system, like I said, it's an extended deprecation cycle for the legacy systems. So we will very, very clearly announce that, say, 6 months out, we'll have no support for these legacy systems, but the goal is that new X blocks would start using the Bootstrap theming system as well. And it's very well documented. Bootstrap is broadly adopted, so yes?
For clarity, as you described it, like, it sounds like theming will be applicable to just style and colors, fonts, and like simple CSS
Mm-hmm.
things. So does that sort of limit what is possible? Like if one wanted to simplify an interface or something like that, does that limit what's going to be possible with that type of theming?
So we're considering that out of scope of Bootstrap theming. It's still entirely possible to support it through other mechanisms. We don't know what those are yet. If you have thoughts, ideas, we welcome them. Anything, we do that too in our instances, in our white label instances. So we will need to support that. But for right now, we're focusing on style. Yes? Excuse me? Discussions, you mean in terms of when is it going to use the new styling system? Yeah. So discussions, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I think discussions is mainly done with the pattern library. So if we tackle pattern library first and start removing that, we want to work in parallel for providing support and removing the pattern library. So, geez, it really depends on how long it takes for us to rip out the pattern library, but that's going to be the first thing on our chopping block. Yes?
Yeah, I remember last year we had similar conversations about theming and what to do about it. How much has happened between now and then that's going to land in the next release of edX, in this case Hawthorne?
In Hawthorne? There's not a ton of new Bootstrap stuff within Hawthorne. A lot of the new Bootstrap stuff is, there's quite a bit of it in Studio, but I think not as many, excuse me, not as many folks theme Studio as extensively as they might theme the LMS. I think we do have a list of theming breaking changes that are going to come out with Hawthorne, but Ironwood is probably going to be bigger in terms of new stuff than Hawthorne.
So, follow-up question. He asked something similar with timelines. You talk about, I think, of the full incremental steps, and you've done 2, and there's 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
Any rough idea what timelines we're talking about? A year, 2 years? I mean, to get into 4?
The stages of separate front end?
Yes.
Fully there, I don't know if I can say we'll ever be completely separate front end. We're going to start out by doing all new code that way. But I think we're always going to have some degree of server-rendered Python that we'll have to support. It's not realistic to say, even if I could give you a timeline, I couldn't guarantee that we would align with it. It's a goal. It's a pie-in-the-sky goal, and it's what we want to shoot for, but I couldn't give you a date. Yes?
Suppose that I want to replace a larger component. For example, like, suppose that I go like dashboard and I want to replace the whole front end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or like a big part of it. Would that be within the vision of the UI?
That falls under interface changes. And so, like I said, there was a question earlier about similarly modifying some chunk of UI. We do support that internally. We use that internally. So probably, but that's not going to be within the realm of Bootstrap. It's not within the realm of theming. We would need a separate system for that. Mm-hmm.
One more question.
Yes?
Sorry, so as for moving toward React, individually React-based apps, so would you think that theming would maybe be well done to be reflected exactly the same comprehensive theming? So, I mean, essentially, that can be done the same with fields and components and everything. I mean, we did an experiment about just to see like what would be probably the best solution to that.
Sure, we have. We have a ton of ideas about this, and overriding specific components, specific files, is definitely something that we've discussed. And if we're separating out our style, our display components and our container components, then that becomes a lot easier. So in my mind, probably something like that's what we would want to strive for, as long as we can guarantee a clear API contract.
Great. Another round of applause for Ari.
Yes?
Return the presentation to your contact information at the very beginning.
Sure. There we go.
You do